Fosi has a new 2.1 channel amp out that has the potential to pull a lot of people in based on its looks alone. It has some nice design touches, actually looks really good, but it does have a few question marks that had me scratching my head a bit. But we'll get into those later on. It's the $189 MC351. It's a 3255 amp chip design, like most others they produce, but where this one differs from many of the others produced is the actual design and casework. It's a bit of a breath of fresh air, really. I really like this touch larger design they went with here. The finish is a nice smooth black satin, and the rounded corners look a bit more upscale than the typical little rectangles we get that in some cases can look a bit too industrial. We get the Fosi brand look with the copper trim along with of course the volume knob, but something a little different on this one is a single VU meter. It looks clean and actually catches your eye, and based on previous comments I had on other videos, sort of what a lot of people were looking for. It came up a number of times that people wanted to see a larger case and VU meters. I think dual VU meters would have been the way to go on a stereo product, but I also get it, space and money. And I'm sure they wanted to keep this entire package under 200, and we still get most of the look with a single. Are we dangerously approaching a VU meter overload here? I still think it's kind of fun on the budget products, but I do have a feeling that every company is going to have one out soon if they don't already. And taking a quick glance at my office, I counted 8 of the 30 desktop size amps I had in there had VUs. So we're still well under half, so I think we're in the safe for the moment. But out of those 30, 5 had tubes, so we did overtake the tube amps. And I think I'm good with that. In most cases, I would take the VU meter over the budget tube, but to each their own. I won't take much of your time here, but I do have a simple request. If you could, please like and subscribe, comment, phone a friend, send a carrier pigeon, whatever floats your boat. Your interactions drive videos to a larger audience, and without you guys watching, none of this would even be possible, so thanks for your support so far. Alongside the VU, we have the mode button to select to things like Bluetooth, which I gave the highly non-scientific but equally effective walk around my house test and never lost connection. Range was pretty good there. Usually these are, but occasionally you'll run into one that only has about 20 feet of range before breaking up, so it's always good to check these. Then an RCA input, and this is where I brought in a Wheem Pro Plus in to, well, up the sound quality for Bluetooth, as well as greatly extend the features available through their Wheem Home app. At this point, I'm curious if there's anyone out there watching who doesn't own some sort of Wheem yet. Let me know below what's holding you up if that's the case. And if you're the user who has one of each, let me know too. I swear these things might be multiplying. The next 3 connections are the digital options: coax, optical, and USB. I plugged the USB into my computer. Everything was instantly detected, no driver issues. I always like to check the sound settings on these as well when I go over USB to make sure none of the enhancements are being turned on in Windows. But this one was good to go. Plenty of other options here as far as digital. You could bring in your TV over optical, a CD transport. You get the idea. The MC351 has its fair share of inputs, giving this one a lot more flexibility than some of the others, and covering most of the bases for anyone looking for a simple integrated amp. I would push the topic of soundbar replacement here, but the lack of HDMI and remote makes that one a hard push for me. Everything sort of keeps bringing me back to small room desktop here, but more on that in a few. If we take a closer look at the back, we have something we don't see very often, and that's a powered sub channel, as well as a pre-out for those looking to connect to the more so standard powered sub. The channel for the passive sub is stated to be 350 watts, and is one of the first items that perplexed me a little bit on this one, because I don't think it's honestly that common to have a passive sub. Maybe within the DIY community to a small extent, but active subs are so easy to come by these days that I'm not sure what the driving force was to add that. I actually have a new SMSL product in as well with the passive sub channel, so I guess it's a thing right now. Maybe I should build a passive sub for testing some of these out in the future, but then it sort of comes back to why when we have so many good active options. The pre-out is a 3.5mm connection, which isn't my favorite either, but it does work fine, and I can verify that it is controlled through the Fosi volume input. No crazy dual volumes trying to balance between the amp and the sub, like on some of these earlier desktop designs. The binding posts are, well, binding posts, but just to note, it's the typical small size on these, but I didn't run into any issues with various sizes of banana plugs. The only part that needs a little caution is if you're going in with bare wire. Things can get a little close in that way if you're not being cautious. I open this one up as I usually do, and straight away, this one isn't as simple to open as the V3s of the world. You have to really dig deep to get the hardware holding the top cover on, but this may be the only look you need to get here, as there really isn't much of a reason to open this one up. No op-amp swapping available here, but we do get to see a different design by Fosi. This heatsink design is a bit different than what we've seen in the past from them, but still carries over a lot of the same principles. heatsink on the bottom, pull it away from the rest of the components. This amp to me feels more like the simple desktop amp where you know the space and what you need, or possibly you're just getting into this rabbit hole of a hobby and this is your first big step. It's simple in that you can plug this in and go, no need for additional DAC streamers, has loads of inputs to connect to basically anything. It just really isn't a powerhouse. It's fine and plenty loud for a small space like an office or bedroom, likely more than you need, but driving power-hungry speakers like these CSS Tories, you can basically max out the volume. It's really loud, mind you, but just an observation in comparison to the V3 monos, which will put out quite a bit more sound. And before you ask about using a bigger power supply than the 32 volt 5 amp included, I tested it out with a 48 volt 10 amp as well. It's just a bit gain limited. If you need something for a larger space and you're using less than efficient speakers, take note, this will put out clean and good sounding signal, but it's just not as powerful as some of the other designs. As for pairings, I mentioned the CSS Tories first, which sound good on this amp, but do take quite a bit of power to get moving. So while they sounded good at my desk near field, it's not something I would likely pair in a large space or sitting at a great distance. The next speaker I tested with was the Emotiva B1 Plus, the older model, and these are much more efficient. Definitely took less amp to drive these to loud levels. I still preferred the Tory sound in this case, but that's more of a speaker review more than an amp review. Full-size floor-standing speakers won't get my recommendation as one, a lot of them require more power, and two, generally you have larger speakers in larger rooms. This one is small room safe rated by me, or medium room safe if your expectations are not Metallica concert levels of volume. What works really well on this one is its simplicity. It's an all-in-one single box that can have you up and running in no time at all, really. I like this one for the person just looking to keep it simple, rather than the tinkerer or DIY guy or gal who likes to mix and match equipment. Myself, I would gravitate more to the V3 monos and pick and choose my streaming and DAC. But a lot of people honestly could care less. They'll connect to that Bluetooth and never look back. And that's perfectly fine too. Not everything has to be taken down to the microscope level on every single product design. Some of these are just made to work and put a smile on someone's face, and that's really all it was designed to do. I would actually really like to see them take this product a step further. Keep the same case design, heck, even go bigger if they want. It's a really good look and has some real potential. Add a second VU meter, might as well since this is a stereo amp after all. Get rid of the powered sub channel, put a more typical sub out RCA, and add some bass management. So many people pair these up to small bookshelf speakers, so we might as well get the most out of them. Have a selectable filter, something like 70 to 100 Hertz, and let the sub handle the heavy hitting in the bass regions. It'll clean up the distortion on the speakers and really open things up. After that, add HDMI with that newly acquired space from the removal of the passive sub terminals, and finally a remote. The last two would really boost this product for the soundbar replacement crowd. It might seem like a lot to ask, but I have no doubt Fosi could pull it off when you look at the evolution of their current product line. Let me know down below what your dream configuration would look like as well. I didn't even go into the particulars of amp chips, op amps, PFFB, various other connections, so build out what your ideal spec would look like. You get a pretty clear picture where I think this one falls based on all this. It's a nice looking, good sounding amp, works great for the person shopping for the all-in-one. It's not the biggest and baddest design that Fosi makes, but I feel like it's not supposed to be. It does what it's supposed to well, and I like it for what it is. I just wouldn't put it ahead of something like the new V3 Mono. In my mind, these are for different crowds altogether. I have one last simple request. Please like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already. I have well over 100 videos out at this point covering everything from budget to high-end, DIY and vintage. Only thing missing is acoustic room treatments for tap dancing. But if you really want it, no.